Hello, everyone. My name is Buddy Costley. I'm a retired school superintendent in Georgia and now CEO of School Dog Solutions. We're a company based in Georgia. You may be able to tell that from the slight accent that I'm speaking to you today. But regardless of your area of the country, I know we're all concerned and focused on the area of school safety. We're really proud at School Dog to have what we think is one of the nation's first school safety platforms that actually changes human behavior, actually trains human behavior just by the act of using it, so that you can get data to prevent and be proactive, prevent crisis, prevent accidents. I'm here today because not only is our company kind of being poised to, hopefully change and add to the conversation of making you more powerful as an educational leader or as a school resource officer in keeping our children and our staff safe, but we find ourselves as the hub of a conversation, a growing professional learning community around school safety. We're learning, but we're also able to take what systems are doing that are partners of ours and then sharing those with other systems and taking that conversation back and forth. So this video today is a short segment that we wanted to do to share a recent conversation that just appears to be popping up again and again and again. In fact, it was so poignant that our team discussed it and said, you know what, we need to share this across the nation and maybe start or amplify this conversation. And it has to do with what the role of an SRO is, a school resource officer. As we're all aware, back in the old days, in the early 21st century, 25 years ago, SROs were luxuries. But now they've become either a requirement or an expectation by boards of education, by parents and community members, even by legislatures across the nation in 2025 and 2026. So if SROs are becoming not just an extra, resource, but an integral, vital resource on our school leadership teams, one of the trainings that we were trying to accomplish back in the summer of 2025 is to get SROs to rethink what they are, to rethink their role. And we start off with the question is, what if you started seeing yourself not just as a law enforcement officer on the beat at school, or even whatever you do at the school, but you see yourself in a whole different way. You see yourself as a school leader. Now, obviously, we got two major stakeholders that are involved with School Dog: the educational leader, we're talking about the principal, the assistant principal, perhaps counselors, but the district administrators, school safety coordinators, operations directors, superintendents. Those are what we typically see as the educational leader. But what we've noticed is that oftentimes this very, very important part of our team, the school resource officer, is seen as an officer, seen as a very brave human being, albeit wearing a badge on our behalf, putting themselves in harm's way, and we thank them for their service. So what we started to think about is, what if we started thinking about them as a leader? Well, rewind to summer, we held a class at the GASRO conference, the Georgia Alliance for School Resource Officers and Educators. And we had about 40 SROs in the room. And we started having this conversation. What if you saw yourself as a leader? And then some of the ways that might transfer into their daily duties. And we had an SRO raise his hand and he said, look, I don't mean any disrespect, but I'm sitting in a room with a bunch of people like me, and you're telling us that we need to be a leader. And, we need to take initiative. And you're telling us that the expertise we have matters and that the things that we log in School Dog, which is, School Dog is one of its functions is a safety tracker. It helps people see what others see and log into School Dog as a safety factor. And he said, but here's my problem is my principal is so busy. He's so hardworking. I rarely get any time with him. So if you're saying to me, it's like, hey, we should meet on the front end, talk with our school leadership team, talk with our principal, talk with our APs, share intelligence, share data together on the front end before something bad happens. He says, basically, I can really only get a hold of them when something bad happens or when they need my investigative services or things that I'm allowed to do for the school. Now, that sounds like a criticism, but I didn't take it as a criticism. I'll tell you how I took it. Now, I'm a former middle school principal and a retired school superintendent. And I heard that. And so he was talking about, the principals ability and accessibility in meeting and speaking and planning and collaborating with a very important member of the team, the SRO. And the first thought I had in my head was guilty. If I went back in time to my time as a middle school principal in Georgia, I remember I did have an SRO. I was one of those lucky principals, but oftentimes I was so busy, I call it bees around my head. I was so busy and we were just so focused on the work that it never even occurred to me that I could be having more proactive, collaborative conversations on the front end. Yes, of course, we would plan an athletic event, or we might plan, for a key, unique event that was happening at the school. But in terms of an integrated approach to treating that SRO as a leader and as a part of my team, which may blow some of your minds because some of you may be ahead of where I was in the early 2000s. But the difference is when this gentleman, this hero, this law enforcement officer raised his hand and shared that I saw the body language in the room. And it wasn't critical, it wasn't adversarial, it was a recognition of an experience. And that is the purpose of this video today, is two things. One is if you're a principal or a superintendent listening to this video today, and you've already integrated your SRO, not just the leadership at the district office, but the SRO, doing the rounds every day, high-fiving kids, supporting teachers every single day in your school, helping parents. If you've already integrated that man or woman, that professional into your team, and you're having collaborative, data-based conversations, hopefully using School Dog, then you need to pat yourself on the back and tell people that you're doing that, because what we've learned since that meeting in June of 2025, this conversation keeps coming up, so much so that we thought maybe there's some hard-working, very well-intended principals. It's never even occurred to them, and that was my problem. I was not intentionally leaving my SRO out of discussions. It just never occurred to me that I could be more proactive. It never occurred to me that that man had more expertise around safety than I did, and I wasn't tapping into that. I never asked his opinion. Sometimes those are opinions, those perspectives are different, and they're at odds with each other. And sometimes that leads to some tension and maybe what we call friction between a law enforcement's perspective and an educational leader's perspective. But if I see that SRO as, wait a minute, I may not always agree with his or her perspective, but that perspective informs, that person is giving me something that I didn't see before. Now I have more information to make a better decision, as a principal for my students and staff. Why wouldn't I listen to that? I don't have to agree with it all the time. And vice versa. We actually talked about in that classroom that day, it's like, listen, you've got principals. Who are principals? Principals are content area teachers that were promoted to areas of leadership. So I'm an English teacher. I know how to teach 5-paragraph essays in Shakespeare, but I was promoted to assistant principal and assistant superintendent and given all of this responsibility from day one on safety, on workers compensation claims, things that I didn't know very little. I knew very little about. So now I have to be a safety expert, but I'm a teacher at heart, and I'm having to learn all of this secondhand. Whereas I have trained men and women in law enforcement that have a different set of eyes, a different safety nose, so to speak, that I could be tapping into. How would I wrap all of this up? Is we've got to listen. If that perspective is out there, we've got to find out whether it's adequate. Because if you were like me and you said, you know what, guilty, we're not doing that on purpose. This is just the typical human being thing that we have in leadership, whether it's leadership in schools, leadership in government, leadership in a private company, leadership at church even, is when human beings are coming together, sometimes we fail to see that perspectives are not being tapped. And one of the messages that occurred to me that we're just trying to share for your consideration, maybe you agree or disagree with some of the things that I'm sharing. I'm just relaying some perspectives that we're hearing across the field. Is if you feel like, you know what, this never occurred to me. Yeah, we really only talk to the SRO when there's something going on or when there's something unique. What if I tapped into that SRO's expertise and feedback and knowledge and what that person is seeing through School Dog and through anecdotally. What if I tapped into that professional's perspective more often and built that person into the proactive portions, the upfront portions? Oftentimes they're only brought in after the crisis or after the problem, but we may be missing that half. And if you're like me and you said guilty, the best thing that it's a beautiful thing, and that's what we celebrate in School Dog, is if we find a vulnerability, we celebrate the knowledge of it because I can do something about it. I can't do something about something that I'm not aware of. So we're trying to amplify this conversation. It would be interesting to see what you think about it, whether you think this has any validity, and maybe you just ask your SROs, hey, look, do you feel like your expertise is being tapped? How can we better tap into that? And also, how can we better share our perspective as educational leaders with you? And that's basically what we have: two people with two different training bases, with two different sets of experiences, two different perspectives. And then what we can do is we won't change each other, and not necessarily we may not even necessarily want to change each other, but we definitely want to integrate those perspectives to a much wider and robust understanding of what is happening at schools so that we can make a better leadership decision. As we say at School Dog, the collection of data gives us a very special superpower. If I have formative data, just like literacy data, why do we collect literacy data as principals and APs in October? Because we can use that data to literally change the future. It gives us power to change the future. So safety data will do the same thing. If we're more collaborative and proactive, it gives us the power to create better outcomes, to make a better universe months out. So I think that's a pretty cool power. And I want to close this video by saying thank you to you for what you do for children across this nation. You don't get thanked enough. I want to thank our law enforcement officers for their service and being willing to wear that badge on our behalf. And I want to thank those hardworking educational leaders who stand up for children every single day. And you don't get thanked enough, but I assure you this retired school superintendent can relate to what you experience every day. And I'm very proud at this point in my career, and I know you will be too. Thank you for what you do, and we'll tune in next time for maybe another conversation to increase awareness. Thank you.